On the 10th of September 2025, political violence once again shook America. Charlie Kirk, the outspoken conservative activist, founder of Turning Point USA and one of Donald Trump's closest allies, was shot and killed while speaking at a public debate event at Utah Valley University. He was 31 years old. For over a decade, Kirk had been a leading voice of the MAGA movement, mobilizing young conservatives and building Turning Point USA into one of the most influential right-wing organizations in the country. To his supporters, he was a fearless defender of faith, freedom, and American first ideal. To his critics, he was a polarizing figure who spread conspiracy theories and hate against minorities. His assassination by Tyler Robinson shook the nation, sparking grief, anger, jokes, and renewed debate about the rising threat of political violence. Leaders from across the political spectrum condemned the attack. Donald Trump announced that Kirk would posthumously receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, even though he doesn't seem too bothered about his death anymore.
How are you holding up over the last 3.5 years?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
From the outset, investigators and the public struggled to make sense of Tyler Robinson's motives. On the surface, Robinson's background appeared contradictory. Raised in a conservative, pro-Trump household, yet, according to his mother, he had recently shifted left, becoming more openly supportive of gay and trans rights, and he had a relationship with a transgender woman. He reportedly told his partner that he had shot Kirk because he had had enough of his hatred, but he also admitted that he had only been planning the attack for just over a week. The messages and symbols Robinson left behind only deepened the confusion. Bullets he carried were engraved with phrases drawn from the internet memes, video games reference, and anti-fascist slogans, blurring any clear ideological line. One read Bella Ciao, the name of an Italian resistance anthem. Another carried a mocking message from furry subculture. To some, this inscription suggested a political motivated act. To others, they looked more like nihilistic trolling, a grotesque shitpost translated into real-world violence. This ambiguity has left analysts, commentators, and law enforcement unsure whether Robinson's act was a coherent political nation or the product of a warped online culture where ideology and irony collapsed into chaos. This video is not about retracing Tyler Robinson's motives or walking through the minute-by-minute chronology of the shooting. There are already countless videos and articles doing that. Instead, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, what Charlie Kirk's killing represents in the broader trend of escalating political violence, because beyond one man's stories, what we're witnessing is the resurgence of terrorism in America and around the world. A terroristic act isn't just a random violence, it's violence with a purpose. It's carried out to advance an ideological, political, or religious cause with the intention to intimidate a population or pressure a government or an international organization. These acts can involve death, property destruction, economic disruption, or environmental harm, anything that poses a serious risk to human life. When violent extremism crosses the line, an attack is carried out, it becomes terrorism. On the other hand, terrorism financing means providing or collecting funds to support terrorism, whether or not those funds are ever used in a terrorist attack. Terrorism financing is a standalone offense. The simple act of raising or moving money, knowing it could go towards terrorism, is enough to be prosecuted. This issue exploded onto the global agenda after the September 2001 attacks in New York. Just 1 month later, the Financial Action Task Force, also called FATF, issued its special recommendation on terrorism financing. This recommendation called on government to criminalize terrorism financing, seize assets relating to terrorism financing, and work together internationally on investigations. These recommendations also push financial institutions and other vulnerable businesses to detect and report suspicious transactions. The theory was simple. If you can cut off the money, you can stop the attack before they happen. A smart idea on paper, but as we will see in the next chapter, in practice it doesn't quite work that way. The FATF sets the global standard on counterterrorism financing. The recommendations focus on preventative measures, and that means businesses that handle clients' funds, like banks, financial institutions, lawyers, real estate agents, stuff like that, all of them are expected to spot and stop terrorism financing before it happens. They do that by training customer-facing staff and staff monitoring transactions behind the scenes to recognize red flags. The staff need to understand what a client's behavior look like when it's suspicious or when a payment might be funding a terroristic organization. Here an example. A bank teller. Their job isn't just to process the payment, they're also watching for signs. Maybe the money is being sent to a charity that's on a watch list or to an individual with known extremist ties. Maybe the payment reference includes coded numbers or terms linked to terrorism like 1488, a well-known neo-Nazi symbol. Sometimes this can lead to almost absurd situations. In the UK, one woman had her transaction flagged because she wrote funds for ISIS in the payment reference, but ISIS wasn't the terrorist group, it was the name of a horse. So yes, keyword monitoring can be a bit blunt sometimes. But here is the problem. The system mostly focuses on one type of risk. Someone in the country sending money overseas. Think of a person in the UK wiring funds to ISIS abroad. This is because this is one of the easiest type of monitoring, but banks can simply flag any transaction to a certain country like Afghanistan, Burkina Faso, places near conflict zone, and review them manually. And of course, it's also a very scary scenario. Western counterterrorism frameworks were built in the shadow of 9/11, where a foreign Islamist extremist group carried out an attack on US soil that created a kind of collective fear in the West, the idea that the biggest dangers come from the outside. But the truth is that that fear is largely misplaced. Most terrorism financing risks don't come neatly packaged as foreign money transfer, and that's where our current frameworks falls short. Let's take a step back and look at the data. A study on Islamist terrorist attack between 1979 and 2021 found something surprising. Almost 90% of Islamist attacks happened in Muslim majority countries, and the victims were overwhelmingly Muslim too. The country hit the hardest were Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. So the popular narrative of a foreign Islamist threat constantly targeting the West doesn't really hold up. Instead, what we've seen in recent years is a very different pattern, is a sharp rise in the so-called lone wolf attacks. These aren't carried out by big, well-funded organizations. They're usually self-funded individuals. Just think of a few examples: the 2011 Oslo bombing by a far-right extremist, 2014 Isla Vista killing in California by an incel attacker who used his car as a weapon, and the 2019 Christchurch mosque attack in New Zealand carried out by a white supremacist. The FATF highlighted this trend in a 2021 report. It noted that lone wolf attacks are usually low cost, simple, and almost impossible to spot in advance. This is because the financing looked like everyday life spending, a plane ticket, a car rental, buying a firearm with personal savings, nothing that a bank system would automatically flag. We don't need to look far to see how this trend continues today. Take Luigi Mangione, the man accused of assassinating United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York. Mangione didn't rely on shadowy networks or overseas funding. He brought ghost gun parts online, traveled by bus, and stayed in cheap hostels under false IDs. His funding was indistinguishable from the spending of any young man living on savings. And yet, the impact of his attack was national, sparking outrage and debate about corporate power and America's broken healthcare system. More recently, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump underscored the same reality. A lone gunman with minimal preparation and resources nearly altered the course of US democracy. Again, there was no complex conspiracy, no foreign pipeline of funds, just an individual acting on radical beliefs, using accessible weapons, and leaving behind almost no financial markers for authorities to detect beforehand. The same pattern holds in the killing of Charlie Kirk. Tyler Robinson acted alone, bringing a firearm into a public event and ending the life of one of the most prominent figures in US conservative politics. His motives remain confused, mixing online subculture reference with political grievances, but what's clear is that his act required no large organization, no sophisticated network, and no suspicious financial trail. What we're seeing from the killing of Charlie Kirk is the continuation of a new era of terrorism in something far more diffuse and unpredictable. Increasingly, terrorism is about individual, self-funded, radicalized online, and operating outside traditional structures, turning everyday frustrations, grievances, or ideologies into acts of deadly violence. These lone actors' attacks slip past the monitoring system designed after 9/11 because there's no suspicious bank transfer, no overseas contact, no funds to trace. And that's the challenge we face today, a world where terrorism financing rules, watch lists, and border controls can't stop the radicalized individual sitting alone in their laptop, buying a gun with personal savings, and deciding to act. If anything, these cases show us that the fight against political violence is no longer just about tracing money flows, it's about understanding the social, political, and digital environment that produce lone actors in the first place. A compounding factor is the wider political climate in the United States, which is already marked by intense polarization and some of the highest homicide rates among advanced democracies. The examples of Luigi Mangione, Charlie Kirk, and the attempt on Donald Trump's life are not isolated anomalies. They are part of a pattern that has repeated itself multiple times in just the past few years. In such a climate where anger and violence simmer close to the surface, lone actors' attacks become not only possible, but plausible and normalized. Until we confront this reality, tragedies like this will continue to shape USA violent new era. This is all for me now. Thank you for watching. My name is Julia. I'm a certified anti-money laundering specialist. In my day job, I help businesses comply with anti-money laundering legislation. Here on YouTube, I talk about anti-money laundering, money laundering, terrorism financing, financial crime, all of this fun stuff. If you're interested, please comment, like, subscribe, you know the usual, and I'll see you on the next one.